My guest today poses the question, what would your next chapter look like if you made the decision to stand for something in your life that's bigger than you? Something that you'd like to defend, that you would get on a soapbox and tell the world about. How would your life look different? How would you be different if you made that choice? This is a hugely inspiring conversation, and I know that it's going to make you want to stand up and make a change in your life almost immediately. I hope you enjoy it. Building a business and life that blends contribution, fulfillment, and financial reward? Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the show for women in their 40s and beyond who are on this adventure. I'm Angela Rasmus, and I'm delighted you're here. Well, hello there. You guys are in for such a treat today because we're going to be having a wholehearted conversation with the queen of possible herself, Angela Philp, who is over in Toulouse in France. But she's a Kiwi by birth, which is probably one of the reasons we connected so darn well, sharing both a heritage and a first name. But one of the things I have to start with is Angela's favourite quote, which I just find delightful. And it goes, to change one's life, start immediately, do it flamboyantly with no exceptions. Now, Angela is a phenomenal leadership coach, and she creates adventures for women who want to improve their creativity when they're faced with challenge and really deepen that impact that they have on the world. So you can see how that quote really fits the purpose and the way that Angela is showing up for so many women across the globe. But let's dig a little deeper. Where did that quote come from, Ange? I think you mentioned that you've been following it since you were about 17. Why did it grab you so?
Well, I used to collect quotes right from when I was about 13, actually. And, the way I have a story where my parents moved to Australia when I was 11, and I had to change my life completely already then. And I was going through a bit of a situation. Well, no, not even a situation. It was even before that. Then I moved to Belgium as an exchange student. So that quote sort of like found me, I think. It sort of resembled what my life already was. It was always, well, I'm changing again and I'm changing again. And then I moved back to New Zealand after I finished my study in Australia. And that was after a rather tragic relationship. And that quote came back to me, and it was like, well, that's it. I can create the life and be whoever I like. And there's no point in trying to fix something to sort of fit it into what I might have been or who I might have been before. So let's just do it. Do everything, change everything.
I love that philosophy, that, you know, the idea that we can create our lives. I mean, so often I think that we get stuck in this idea that life is happening to us, but it sounds as though the real philosophy is take the proverbial bull by the horns and make it fit around us, yeah?
Exactly. It's you. I have a very firm belief that you do create your life. You're an active creator in what is happening around you. And so you can take the circumstances that you're given and shape them into whatever you want.
I love that.
And you can also create different circumstances that way for yourself.
And it's very true. And that comes with a big part of that would be confidence and self-trust and willingness to take a chance.
It's definitely willingness to take a chance. I think I know that a lot of my clients say the thing that they want is that I want confidence first. And it's like, well, confidence isn't something that you have first quite often. It's you have fear first, and it's in doing it that you get the confidence. But yes, there is a lot of, I don't like to say the word work. I'm hesitating. But there is work to be done on remembering. I think it's a remembering that the inherent nature of all of us is creative, resourceful, self-reliant, responsible, and productive. We have that in us. So it's practicing it in spite of the fear.
I love that idea of remembering. I actually have a very similar philosophy as well, which is why we connect. I believe that when it comes, for example, a purpose, you don't go out there and discover it or find it. You uncover it. You unearth it. It's already in there. And especially if you are conscious of what you're responding to, as you're suggesting, you start to recognize what's inside of you. But I love the concept of remembering. So what makes us go to sleep?
Oh, that's a good question. I wasn't expecting that one. I think what makes us go to sleep is it's our cultures, our educations, it's our conditioning. It's as we grow up, we're born a beautiful wee soul, and And I have no criticism of how we're conditioned, because that's just part of the human experience. We all get conditioned, but it's that conditioning of who we should be, and then we internalize those voices of who we should be, and what's right and what's wrong, and what a woman is and what a man is, and the right things for a woman to be as a mother, and there's an awful lot of pressure that we have on us as we're growing up. And then once we're already an adult, and then we're in this conditioning, and it's sort of hard to find our way out. It seems it's the fishbowl of the world we live in. Everything we see is seen through those filters.
Yeah, and that idea, speaking of fish, when we've heard the expression that how can you know that you're floating in water, as a fish? You got no idea, because it's what you've always known. I think conditioning is huge, but I think one of the beauties is that as we do become older and wiser, as we do step more into these next chapters, we tend to wake up more. I've certainly seen with my own clients that idea of beginning to trust yourself more, of becoming less concerned about what other people think of you, and being more comfortable with who you're becoming. I think that really allows us to open up and remember, but then to open up to these new possibilities, which certainly
Absolutely.
seems to be what's been happening with you. Tell us about what is unfolding in this next chapter at the moment, because it's hugely exciting.
Oh, it is. It's very exciting. And I just want to come back to what you were saying about trusting. I think while we're conditioned, there's always a little inkling of an idea, something inside us that we sort of aren't quite sure what to do with, or try and do something with, and then it sort of feels a bit risky, so we put it back in its box inside. But I really am convinced that we all know, we all have something to live out in our lives, and several things to live out in our lives, by the way. It's not once you've lived one thing. That's why the change your life, do it flamboyantly, start immediately, do it flamboyantly is a repeating process. But so just to go back to that, we get conditioned, but there's always that light in there. There's always something that we want to be doing that we're not daring to say even to ourselves, and it keeps coming out in the things that we like, in the books that we read, in the people that we listen to that have voices that resonate a little bit differently from the ones that we already know.
That is so true. That is so utterly true. And what you were saying about the change and do it often and flamboyantly, and how that is put on repeat throughout our lives. I mean, the next chapter model of change, the diagram that I always show people and walk them through, those first two stages, that you're feeling discontent, something's missing. Something is missing. There is that inkling of an idea inside of us. But then it's a case of trying to pull that out and shape it to actually identify what that desire is. Because sometimes it's been so tamped down by the conditioning or by our responsibilities. But I love how you've identified there that these are the markers, almost like the breadcrumbs, the things you like, the books you read, the people that you listen to, the things you find yourself nodding to. And even I'd go stick another one on there as well. If I gave you a soapbox so that you could stand on it, forget about the audience, right? If you're scared of crowds, don't worry about that. But you've got the soapbox. Here's the opportunity to talk about the thing in the world that you want to address, that you see injustice, that you see an opportunity. Get on your soapbox. They're all indications, aren't they, that are leading us towards that spark of an idea that is sitting inside. So I guess you found your spark. What have you been, what was the inkling inside of you?
I found my soapbox. And it's so funny, because I was such a good girl when I was younger, and my soapbox is all about women in leadership and gender equality. And I used to work at UNESCO in women's education and women's and girls' basic education. And that was the reason I moved to France to work for UNESCO. That was my first big dream that I remember. It was me who was creating my circumstances rather than me making the best of my circumstances, because I certainly didn't choose to move to Australia with my parents when I was 11, that was for sure. So moving to France was like, right, I really want to work with women, and I really believe that a world that works for everyone is a world where women are in 50% of the leadership and decision-making positions and I don't just mean in hierarchy in business, I mean all around the world, that in terms of politics and grassroots movements, in villages, that we actually have 50% of the decision-making capacity, because we are indeed 50% of the population, and we are not a niche, and that's how we keep often treating ourselves, and that's the way the world runs for the moment. So this is me on my soapbox. Here we go. But it was hard for me to have that voice when I sort of like tempered it down. I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't be saying it that loud, and whose feathers am I going to be ruffling if I say that? And maybe I won't be liked. And a lot of these thoughts weren't conscious. They were just felt in fear of keep your noise down, keep your voice shut, keep your mouth shut. You know,
and isn't that that conditioning that we were talking of before? You know, even though it's not necessarily said overtly, there is societal encouragement for us to just be a little bit less noisy. And
exactly.
Just fit in, you know, standing out. In fact, can be some of the more dangerous things that can happen. If you do stand out in the crowd, you're the target. So it's not surprising that we need to, I think, build our courage muscles over the years, perhaps. I mean, I think some people are born with it. You know, you think of some of the incredible young women, and there's great young men as well, but we're talking of women here at the moment who have found their voice at such an early age and don't seem afraid to speak out loud. I get so excited when I see that. But I know it took me a while. When I was a lot younger, I had some experiences that really told me, do not stand out. It is not a good idea. It's not safe. But now it's like, screw that. I want to talk about the things that are important to me, and life's too short.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly it, isn't it? Life is too short. And then sometimes something becomes just too important, and you have to say it. And that's why I really admire these young women and men. But it's interesting that we're and men, I have to say that. No, I don't have to say it. I'm admiring for the moment the young women, because it often has been the young men who've stood out already. And these young women who are standing up and saying, no, because the cost of keeping my mouth shut is too much. Is too high.
Yeah.
And so my big dream, I guess, I didn't realize, actually, no, that's not true. I did realize it was a dream, because it was 10 years ago when I was turning 40 that I wanted to do this. And here I am turning 50 in September, doing it this year, in a slightly different format. But I'm taking women leaders I'm saying from France because that's where I live, but we can be women leaders from around the world, to Uganda to work with women in Uganda, and we're actually going to be. I was in Uganda just recently. Originally, we were going to be working with women and girls with a program called Give Girls a Voice, and as it turns out, we're going to be working with women teachers, and we're going to be helping them with their self-esteem and their capacity and their empowerment, basically, so that they can spread the Give Girls a Voice program to more schools.
That's that. I love that idea of going to the teachers. When you're at that level, there's that beautiful ripple effect that can happen. I'm not saying, obviously, the original idea of going directly to the girls was a strong one, but if you come back that level and actually empower them at the grassroots level where they can continue that work in the world, even when you're back in France, the ripple effect will be magnificent.
Exactly. And it was when I looked at working with the girls, it's not appropriate. They're beautiful, they're wonderful, and they need role models within their own society.
Yes.
So that it doesn't become, well, we just look to the Western world and say that that's where all the answers are. And it was really important to me, because for me, empowerment is really the building the confidence and assisting yourself to know the real power that's within you. And I think that those girls need the role models of their teachers and the other women that are coming up in their society, rather than saying, well, it's a white savior thing. But the teachers, that's a whole other thing. That's adult to adult, woman to woman, adult to adult. And it's the same sort of thing I do with the women here or in France or Australia or the US or whoever I'm working with. And the same thing that you do, Ange. It's based on human potential. And we're already working on the programs for that. So I've got women coming with me. We're working on I'm coaching them in their leadership. When I say women leaders, it can be women in corporate, or it could be women with their own business, or it could be women who don't have their own business yet, because it's about self-leadership. What's the next level you're going to? What's the impossible you want to create? And then how are we going to help these other women tap into their potential to create theirs and define what that is?
That concept of self-leadership, I think that's one that deserves expanding a little more. And I think most people have heard of leadership and have a concept of what that actually means and what it looks like. But that idea of self-leadership, I believe it's got to come first. You can't lead others until you have that self-leadership built into you. So just unpack it a little for me. What's your perspective on self-leadership? What does it mean? Is there particular qualities? Just talk to me about that one.
Well, I believe what you just said, Ange. We are not qualified to lead other people until we are truly leading our own lives. There's a lot of for me, it's walking the talk. I don't believe that a leader is someone who's in a hierarchical position. That can be a boss, and that's all. I wouldn't see them as a leader. To me, a leader is it's developing your integrity, being true with yourself first, honoring your word to yourself first, before, as well as honoring it to other people, but everything starts with self. Yeah. So if you're not creating and leading your own life, what you are when you're in a company or in politics or wherever it might be, is you're telling other people what to do or showing them what to do. But as long as you aren't working on yourself, then to me you're out of integrity and you're not a leader. Mm.
And I love that distinction that you can be a boss but not a leader. The whole hierarchical scenario doesn't resonate with me either. I believe that the world is a continuum, not a hierarchy. Yes. It's not there's people above you or below you. I see it as a big long line. And it's like the people who are in front of us, further down the line, simply started before us. And it's their responsibility to turn around and help and guide and be an example to those who are coming behind them. And then they get to do the same thing. Does that make sense? That beautiful exactly. line. And that how you were saying before, you were a little bit hesitant to use the word work when it comes to working on ourselves. I think it's the most valuable work that we can do for all the reasons that you just talked about. If we're developing ourselves, if we're developing our integrity, if we're honoring our word to us first, then that is the most important work that we can do, because then once our own life jackets on, we can then start going out there and helping others. So I think work is a really honourable description and a really necessary description, because it does take effort.
It does take effort. And I think the reason I don't like to use the word work is it's often clouded and shrouded in a notion of drudgery. And I don't see work as drudgery. I see it as effort, not struggle. So often work can, so I'm thinking, what's another word I can use instead of work? But it always comes down to work, because it is an effort, and it's not easy, but it is life-giving. I find energizing and fun when we're doing this work. And I wanted to add, I'm just trying to remember what it is you just said, that I wanted to add something about leadership. Yes, there can be, people can be experts. I love what you just said about having, this continuum. And I remember you, when we were working together as well, you saying that, and I still have that image where you're holding the hand of the person beside you, in front of you, and beside you, behind you.
Yes.
And but there, there's a notion of expertise. Someone can be a leader in their field through knowledge, but I'm talking, and then that person can teach you something, right? So that's great. So it's not discounting knowledge that people can have, but I just get really edgy when someone says, "Oh, such and such is a leader," and they're really not a leader. They're not there. Well, I won't go into world politics and certain males in the United States. I'm not naming any names.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
There's a lot of non-leadership happening and just a lot of ego. And so for me, leadership is based in authenticity, integrity, and having a mission that's bigger than you.
Now there's a really big one. I totally believe that we have to stand for something. As entrepreneurs, we need to stand for something bigger than what it is that we're selling, because that can become redundant and just that reduces us. It reduces us. I absolutely believe in the concept of vision. So you articulated yours so beautifully clearly. 50% of the decision-making scenario should have women at the table. And
exactly.
That's very clear. And then so underneath that, part of your mission is to deliver that through empowering the teachers in Uganda. Where else does your vision take you? Because I'm sure there's other aspects too.
Oh, well, it takes me everywhere, really. For me, well, I'm writing a book at the moment, but it's my whole life, Ange. It's everything I do. I recognize has that focus in some way. So it can be working with my clients, and it can be really just just the conversation I'll have with the and it very is often a woman at the moment at the supermarket next to me at the checkout, and that's, it's not saying it should be, it's just that's the way it is right now. And it'll be the type of conversations that I'm having with young people, with my own children. It'll be the type of conversations I'll have with people in shops, and so it reflects everywhere. But it's also taking me to the work with the clients I have and the book that I'm writing.
No, and I think the reason why I wanted to ask that question is because my feeling is that when we are really connected to purpose, and when we've got this vision that, as you identified so beautifully, this idea that's kindling in your heart, that it runs with you every day. It's like if I think of the overall purpose and vision that I have in terms of connecting women to their self-worth so that they can confidently and consistently take action on their dreams in their business and their life. I mean, that's really the way I articulate it, if I could. That's ironic that I couldn't say that word clearly. But if I look at the everyday practice, I'm like you. I'm having conversations with the women in the supermarket, or here, there, or everywhere, because sitting underneath that bigger vision is this desire that every person that I talk to or come across will feel a little bit better as a result of that interaction. And so that is woven into my purpose. So I think purpose can have, I remember reading this, purpose with a capital P. Yeah, that's the big thing, the changing the world feeling. And then purpose with a little p. It's the things that you do every day that have you in integrity with that overall vision and purpose. And that's Absolutely. What I feel really strongly about you, about the way that you show up in the world.
Exactly. I can't see it any other way. I can't be it any other way. And I think leadership is all about being as well. So I say leadership, for me, it's empowerment, and it's self-empowerment, and it's empowerment of all women. Why was it? Yeah. So it is. It's something that we live, something that we're being, someone who we're being, and something that that we are every day. I can't separate it. I can't separate work and who I am. I can separate it in terms of actions, like, well, today I'll be working on an article, or today I'll be working with clients. But as in who I am, it's part of who I'm being.
Well, I think you summed it up perfectly. We can hear it with the energy that you bring to conversations. I think when we are, or I've seen so often, when we are doing the things that we love, the things that we are happy to stand on a soapbox about, then that the very state of that gives us the energy. It infuses us with energy. So I think that's another breadcrumb in the opposite direction. If you feel exhausted, if you feel deflated, if you feel defeated, depressed, all of those sort of, flatter words, it's because you're disconnected from the thing that energizes you, the idea, the thought, the purpose, the meaning. And so
Exactly.
I think it's so important that we allow ourselves the space to explore and express those things, even if they seem ridiculous. Because I guess...
especially if they seem ridiculous.
Or impossible to use your word.
Yes, because that's our conditioning.
Yeah.
So it's only conditioning that tells us something is ridiculous and impossible. Every single time.
Yeah. And I guess one of the things that would occur to me, I mean, you and I first met probably about 5 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago, when you approached me for some mentoring and coaching. And what I'd like you to just revisit for a moment, even then, this Queen of Possible was part of who you were. But back then, when you were stepping out into this new chapter at that stage, could you have imagined where you are today?
Absolutely not. I remember when I found you, and you know what? I think it was I've been in the house I am now 4 years, and my divorce was finalized and finished, but it was finalized a year ago, and I was there separated for 3 years. And before that, I was talking with you. I think it was even 2 or 3 years before that. I think it'd be even 7 or 8, just about. Because I remember the house I was in, and I remember getting up early in the morning in the dark in winter to have our sessions. And back then, I was in that relationship where I was disempowered. I think that's the most simple way to say it. So I was really disempowered, but I definitely had in my heart a flame that back then, it was just like, I know I can do this. I know what I wanted to do when I was young was, when I was at UNESCO, I know I had a reason. There was something there, but I felt like I couldn't. Although I was tracking you, right, online to see this woman.
Cyber stalking.
Exactly. I was cyber stalking. I stalked you for 2 years. Then I thought, right, that's it. Before I got up the courage, because it was courage that I needed to call you more than anything, to say, am I good enough? I did a lot of my work on myself. And yet I'd grown up in a family where my parents said basically that I could be anything and do anything. So that's how disempowered I was in the situation I was in the relationship I was in. And I remember sitting with you and I was feeling all shy and feeling like, oh gosh, is this really possible? Is this for me? Do I really have I'm too big for my boots. That was my
such a Kiwi thing.
Thought. Oh gosh, you're too big for your boots. Everybody will think you're ridiculous. You shouldn't be too much of a feminist. I mean, whatever, all the sorts of things, all sorts of shouldn'ts and inner critics, and yet I'm a really hard worker, because I recently redid your quiz. I thought, I wonder if I'm still the same. And there I was like, I'm not comparison. I'm the high achiever. It's just like, I haven't worked hard enough. But yeah, and here now I'm like, the word in French is épanoui, and I'm just trying to think of, every now and again, if you hear a gap, it's because I've got a French word coming in.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think, fulfilled. And when I say fulfilled, it's not that, I'm not earning millions yet. Right. And actually that's not even the focus for me. Although I do think that for women to thrive, we do need, and you've helped me a lot with this, we do need to consider finances and income and financial health of a business to be of primary importance. So that is important, but it's not my driving goal. And I don't know if you can hear, sorry, because I've got some background noise here. The house is starting to wake up. But so seeing myself here now running this workshop, because it's the first one this year, these leadership experiences. I've been coaching women now for, I've been running my own workshops here in France since 2015. But imagining that I would really be leading a group of women to Uganda, I would not have seen that back when we first started.
So I am so happy. That's really the message that I want you who's listening to this right now. It's about us taking those first steps. As you said, you know that there's that seed inside, and it's impossible for us to imagine what the tree is going to look like as it grows, because it's, a branch is going to go over there and the foliage is going to go over there, and we don't need to see the whole picture. Just start taking those first steps. And then once you start moving, because you can't steer a parked car, once you start moving, other opportunities will start to pop up, especially when you've got some clarity overall about that purpose. And I don't mean specifics there. It's just like, your purpose, as and the thing that you're really connected to is that equality, is that leadership piece, is that, that empowerment piece. And so other bits sort of pop up and you jump on that piece, and then you jump on that piece. And I think you said before that, a lot of women come into you want confidence, but they need to realize that the actions come first and the feelings come later. And that's what we really need everyone to understand, whether you've got a business now or you're just about to start. Take the first step, and then you could find yourself in Uganda in 5 years' time.
You could, or who knows, who knows who you could be talking to.
Yeah.
That's just it. Until I love that. And I had forgotten that, and you've brought it back to me. I love it. You can't steer a parked car. It is the movement that creates the momentum. You cannot wait for momentum to come if you're not moving. And make the mistakes. I've made mistakes. They've been, some have been excruciatingly painful, and some have been hilarious. They've all got me to where I am now. And I think we have this fear of losing everything, in that expression that you have, start immediately, do it flamboyantly, no exceptions.
Yep.
I used to say you could keep everything you have and become someone different. It's not quite like that, but it's not about saying to everybody in one brutal movement, I never want to see you ever again, and I'm leaving my whole life. It's just what happens when you start creating the one you want. And you will eventually let go of some things because they will let go of you, just because by your momentum, you'll be moving towards something else. So you won't be having everything you had before. You won't have necessarily the same friends or relationships. And I am going to say that because I was really surprised that some friends and relationships have dropped away, but they haven't been painful separations. They've been natural progressions. And there's a whole lot. I think when we're always focused on what we might lose, we never see what we might gain. And it's hard to see sometimes what we're going to gain when we can't see the whole tree, like you said, Ange. At the same time, we can tap into that feeling of who I'm becoming and notice the gains. What we might be letting go of is almost, although it seems so big because we've constructed over the years, what we're actually growing into is so much bigger and so much more empowering and so much more joyful that you have to take that first step out of it to realize it.
Well, I love that idea. Tap into the feeling of who you are becoming. I think, and that's the awareness piece, isn't it? It's noticing. And that's why when you were saying before about the self-leadership being the essential foundations, the platform on which you build everything else, that self-awareness to me is the most important thing. So if you can be aware that something's calling you, if you can be aware that there's some fear, but if you can be aware that there's also some courage, which one's going to win. And I think a piece that comes up as I'm hearing you talk is about holding things loosely. Not trying to wrestle life into submission, but it's about holding it lightly, and so that you can let go of some things so that your hands are now empty so you can pick up something new. That's what it feels like. It feels light and it feels like you're led by curiosity and joy. That's how it feels.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is it. The change one's life is a decision. It's an act. It's a decision that's an action, because deciding is acting. So that first action is a decision.
Yeah.
And then life changes as you hold it loosely, but you follow your joy. It is a bit like what Joseph Campbell has said about follow your bliss, but it's not about following only the good feelings of what's happening immediately in the moment. It's about following the good feeling of being in the right place and knowing that what you're doing is who you're becoming, is contributing to who you're becoming and what you believe. So sometimes, like when I hear that, following the joy and following the bliss, there are some very, I wouldn't say non-joyful moments, but, there's like, oh God, I've got to write this thing, but underneath there's an undercurrent of, oh my God, this is what I'm doing with my life. Oh my God, these are the people I'm talking to. Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
Wow. And then when you hold it loosely, it takes you.
Yeah.
Life takes you.
Well, I think one of the most beautiful things that I've read recently on my website is under angelarasmus.com/stories are the stories. It's one of my goals is to share 1,000 stories of, inverted commas, ordinary women doing extraordinary things. And your story, you responded to my questions, your story is there. And then I knew that we needed to have this conversation. But there's a woman who commented on your story. And she said that when she met you once, she asked you, what do you do? And you said, I give women wings. And I went, drop the mic. That is just like the most amazing picture, word picture that was created in my imagination when I read that. And that's the perfect description. Now, the way in which people give other people wings can differ in all different ways, but I just thought it was the most gorgeous way of describing the work that you do in the world. So hang on to that one. And she remembered that. She met you many years ago, and that's what you said then, and that's what you're still doing today. And I think that is one heck of a triumph.
Oh, thanks, Ange. It's true. I just got goosebumps when you said that, and I know exactly who you're talking about. And I remember, and I think I might have started saying that after some of our work together as well. And it's interesting because I had a part of me saying at the same time as I say that, oh, you shouldn't say that. That sounds, I don't know, too big for your boots. Again, that too big for your boots is what I've always had. And now I know that if I have that voice saying you're too big for your boots, that I should definitely be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah,
Now
because you've hit a growth edge. You've hit a growth edge. The old inner critic, she only comes out and starts throwing her ammunition at you when you are doing something which is a slightly risky, that is taking you out of a comfort zone. That means that you are being exposed in a new way. You're developing, you're growing, you're stretching. That's the only time she thinks, oh, hell, I better get up and do something. We're about to, dangle off a cliff. So, yes, I totally agree with what you're saying. If she starts yelling at you or starts waggling the "you're getting too big for your boots" sign in front of your nose, absolutely. Keep moving because you're going in the right direction.
That's so it. And she yells at me too. She really does. And I notice that as the voice gets louder, but that's what you were talking about, self-awareness. Recognizing that that's the voice now that comes in every time I am on a growth edge, and also doing something which is definitely suited to where I should be going. Yes. And when I say should, I don't say should within a critic, but there's definitely coming from that's heart-led. Then I know that it's like, oh, that's it. That's what I have to do. And the fear is excruciating sometimes, but I do it anyway. So, and that's it. That's where the courage comes in. I'd like to say to everybody, don't wait for it to be comfortable. It is not going to feel more comfortable. It is going to feel harder. My clients come to me and say, can you help me not feel fear? It's like, oh, no. No, probably with me you're going to feel more, but I can assure you that going through it, you will recognize that that was your growth edge and what you needed.
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? If we can show to ourselves that if I can get through this, then you can extrapolate from there. That sort of courage is transferable. That's one of the reasons I'm so big about you having a fabulous file. Because doing something in some area where you've now got evidence of a triumph, be it a little teeny weeny itsy bitsy one, it's still evidence that you can move through that fear. And it's not going to kill you. It may feel like it at the time, but it's not going to kill you. Oh,
absolutely.
Really, really important. Well, my darling, this conversation is exactly where I was hoping it would go. I'm hoping, and I'm not hoping, there's no need for hope here. This is knowing. I'm knowing that someone listening to this can feel that torrent of possibility that runs through our veins when we decide to say yes. When
Absolutely.
we say yes to ourselves, look what can happen, look where we can grow. And neither of us are suggesting that this is a, click my fingers, wow, look at that, success overnight. That's not the way it is. But it's just that continual movement, as you're saying, that, that movement has its own momentum, and that's the thing that gets you going. So is there any, last words of wisdom? There's a woman listening right now who can feel that inkling. What's going to happen?
I would say take a stand for something in your life and say yes to your gifts. I'm really big on taking a stand. Take a stand for something that's bigger than you, that you would like to defend. Do it. Risk it. Risk taking a stand for something. Plant your stake in the ground and say, what do I stand for? And if I lived my life standing for that, what would it look like?
Oh, that's juicy. If I lived my life standing for that, what would it look like? Or how would it look different?
Yeah. Or how would it look? It would be different and also better in the sense that because you were saying before, Angela, fabulous file. We all are hardwired to notice the negative before we notice the positive. So that fabulous file is even more important. But if you said yes to your gifts, instead of saying no to them, and you put your gifts at the service of something greater than you in the world, what would it be?
I think if you did that, you'd find yourself with a pair of wings. I think you would. Well, my darling, with anyone who's listening to us today who wants to come and find out more about this leadership perspective, this special way that you look at the world and the way that you're impacting it, and if they want to get involved, where can they find you in this big, wide world?
Well, you can find me on my website, queenofpossible.com, and it's 3 years out of date. So I have promised myself that is my goal for this next quarter, is actually getting a new website up or changing it, because of the I haven't even mentioned Uganda on it, for example, the leadership adventure in Uganda. However, you can also get in touch with me on through same thing, Queen of Possible on Instagram, because I put a lot of the stories of what I'm doing up on Instagram, and you can get a hold of me there by sending message. And on Facebook, I have a Queen of Possible page, or you can come and find me as Angela Philp in Toulouse.
Perfect. I'll make sure those links are on the page as well when they come to my website, to the podcast, and discover you there, so that people can follow the trail and find out where the impossible becomes possible. So thank you so much. This has just been one of those joyful, energizing conversations, as I knew it would be in this rainy Sydney afternoon.
Oh, and this rainy Toulouse early dark morning because the sun hasn't come up yet. So energy's all around us and all inside us at all times.
It absolutely is. Thank you, my darling. That was wonderful.
Thanks, Ange. This was great.
And to you, my lovely listener, I hope that you are also feeling the energy that was bouncing backwards and forwards between the two Angelas. Now, we were conductors of possibility for you, because what Angela was talking about today, the French Angela, was absolutely true. And you know it, that inside of you there is that spark. There is that little kernel of an idea, that little acorn, however you want to describe it. You know that it's there. Now, it might be that you have not yet expressed this through the lens of a business, and that's the next chapter for you. It might be that you have a business now, but something different is calling you, and you want to pivot and take it into a new direction. Whatever your scenario is, you've heard today, it's possible. Don't wait for that confidence to show up. Don't wait for the entire map to be put out in front of you. Just start taking those first steps. And as you do, those other possibilities are going to come into your line of sight. You can't steer a parked car. But my goodness, my darling, when you put those wings on your back, when you give yourself permission to gift the world with what only you can, then you'll be flying. And we both know that that is true. So I cannot wait to hear what's going to unfold in your next chapter. Take this episode as a catalyst and get started in some small way today. Okay, so until next time, take very good care, and I look forward to talking to you again very soon. Thanks so much for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. I really do appreciate your time. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. And of course, my website, angelarasmus.com. If you enjoy the show, I'd love you to share it with another woman who's in the midst of business and life beyond 40. And if you love it, a review on iTunes or whatever app you listen in on would be fabulous. Reviews somehow impact that deeply mysterious algorithm and make it easier for the show to be found, which is always a good thing. So thanks again, and until next time, take care.